Welcome to another edition of Papa's Perspective, brought to you by Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store and mattress partner of the New York Giants. The celebration of 100 seasons continues for the New York Giants. And, as we're doing during the course of the season, we're looking back at some great moments in Giants history with various broadcasters that called some of the games. And we're joined by ESPN's Joe Buck, who spent so many years at Fox and doing all those NFC championship games. And Joe, first of all, thank you for joining us here on the show.
Oh, absolutely. I need Bob's Discount Furniture right now. I'm in a hotel room. The video looks terrible. Maybe they could give me a lamp to go on the other side of my face so I don't look like I'm in a floodlight right here to my left. But all that being said, it's great to see you. I can tell you've been either at camp or you have been doing the golf tour because you look radiant. Your skin color is absolutely gorgeous. I'm pale as could be, and it's summer.
No makeup is necessary when you work.
No, you're glowing. You're glowing.
You know that. Joe, I want to take you to a time when there was not a lot of sun out because you were on the call for the 2007 NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field, the Giants against the Packers. We knew it was going to be cold, but when you finally got to the stadium, could you believe how cold it actually was?
It's a great question. No, you can't describe it. And you don't want to be the one, you never want to be the one complaining about the weather, but it was part of the story. And I remember when I was going to Louisville to begin my broadcasting career, and I was in the car with my dad, and he said, I want to tell you a couple things. One of the things was nobody cares if the announcer is cold. Nobody cares if the announcer is hot. Nobody cares if the announcer played golf that day. The fans are there to listen to the game, and they want to hear about their team. And in this case, you have a massive audience on this freezing day in Green Bay. The irony of it was my dad did the Ice Bowl, and he did it with Ray Scott. And so when you go back and you look at the highlights, and Ray Scott's like, well, what do you think, Jack? And my dad's like, oh, I think it's cold, Ray. And so there he is breaking his own rule. And so you didn't want to complain about the cold as the announcer. But you're right. I mean, going down to the field, I remember standing up there with Troy, and he and I going, we got to go down to the field because you got to just see what the footing's like, and you got to get a sense of if, it's that much colder down on the field. We went down there. It was like the Griswolds at the Grand Canyon. We went down on the field and was like, okay, let's go back up. It was freezing. And I had never experienced cold like that. As you know, your fingers don't really work right. You're trying to write with a pen and the ink's not coming out. It was a great night for football. I'm glad I can say I was there.
Yeah. And you think about, the offensive linemen usually come out in short sleeves and the whole macho thing. I know the Giants players came out for their normal kind of in shorts, running around, loosening up. Most of the guys went right back in. They're like, the heck with this. Like, this is brutal. This is not the time to act like the tough guy.
No, but I do think if my memory is right, Plexico came out with at least short sleeves pre-game when we were down there. And I just remember looking at Troy, and Troy was like, my God, I don't know how anybody could be standing down here with short sleeves on. But, they're running around and the juices are flowing and what have you. But it was it's a night I'll never forget. And it was an incredible game and worthy of kind of the aura and mystique of Lambeau Field on a, negative temperature night.
It's interesting because going into the game, Eli obviously having played his college ball at Ole Miss, and although Favre was from Mississippi, having played in so many important games in that cold weather, everyone thought that it might favor Favre. And Eli Manning had one of his greatest games ever. 251 yards. Plaxico had 11 catches for $151. They were kind of throwing it around as if it wasn't minus 23 below.
I agree. It was stunning. It was stunning to watch. I felt like, just on the first glance, Green Bay was more affected by the cold than Favre was than the Giants were and Eli was. So, yeah, it was a remarkable game in what was basically a perfect postseason for Eli Manning. I mean, I think it's easy to forget, the 2004 draft and then, the taking over for Kurt Warner and everything that happened in the beginning of his career. But now he went to a different level in that postseason. I mean, you know it better than I. You know the stats better than I. But I just remember seeing kind of fits and starts of his early part of his career, and then that postseason, he just hit it and went to a different Eli than I think any of us had ever seen.
Did you get a sense the Packers were the number one seed, the Giants, or the number two seed, or the number one seed? Yeah, the Giants had beaten the Cowboys the week before in Dallas. But when Brandon Jacobs knocks the logo off of Charles Woodson's helmet, did you kind of get a sense in the booth that, man, these guys came to play and are not intimidated at all, despite the fact that the Packers had routed them earlier that season in MetLife Stadium, or Giants Stadium at the time?
I think that delivered a message. I do. I think that was symbolic of the way that team came in there, that Giants team came in there ready to go. And I think that reflects on Tom Coughlin. I think history, at least for Troy and me, and I know, I think you did this with Troy, but he would tell you that of all the guys that you would think would be tight-lipped when we would sit down with a head coach prior to a game and not reveal anything, Belichick absolutely didn't say anything. Tom Coughlin was great and gave you everything you needed to know. I think trusted us probably because of Troy and his integrity, but he was wide open. And I felt like I walked out of our meeting with Tom knowing that Tom thought his team was ready to go. And to me, if that's the case, then I thought they would play well. I didn't know that they would be ready for that kind of a fist fight in that kind of cold. I think it says everything you need to know. And probably as we talk about it this way, thinking about what was to come in the Super Bowl, it shouldn't have been so surprising. And they probably shouldn't have been such a big underdog going into that Super Bowl for having gone through Green Bay. That team had to feel like behind closed doors, they were a team of destiny.
Your production team did a great job chronicling a play that happened at the end of the first half, which kind of was significant in the sense that the score, obviously, Crosby kicks a field goal to make it 10-6 at the half, but it was sort of a symbol of what that team was as far as just being well coached and smart. They ran a screen, the Packers did, near the end of the first half, and it looks like it might go for a touchdown. And Antonio Pierce splits three blockers and winds up keeping the Packers to a field goal attempt, which made it 10-6 at the half. But, that kind of play sort of was symbolic of what that Giant team was about.
Yeah, there were a lot of guys on that team that aren't going to end up in the Hall of Fame, but I think we're pretty underrated. And I think as a group really played well together. I mean, we're scratching the surface of the offensive players, but Antonio Pierce certainly is on that list. I think the job that Spagnuolo did with that defense, what they had up front, the leadership of Strahan, Antonio, the guys they had in that secondary. Again, I mean, I think when you're in it and it's current events, you get tricked into just kind of buying into the national narrative. And then when you get away from it and you think about those individuals and how they played as a group, again, it should not have been so surprising, I think, to a national audience that they did what they did, not only in Green Bay, but in Super Bowl 42.
And as the game wore on, you almost got a sense that the Giants started to take control. I think there was a long Bradshaw touchdown run that got called back on a Chris Snee holding penalty. But as this game is unfolding, you guys are doing a great job of telling the story of Tom Coughlin's face, which I think has become an X handle, the frozen face of Coughlin. But pictures are worth 1,000 words, and you guys kept cutting to his face, and it's getting redder and redder. What were you thinking when you saw this?
It looked dangerous. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but it looked like it was just going to, like from the movie Frozen, it was just going to like shatter and end up. They may win, but he was going to have to go back and get his face when it warmed up at Lambeau. It was like, my God, this looks like, I don't know what frostbite looks like, but it looked like he was getting close. So it's funny. That's probably the enduring image that I have from that game. When I think of that game, I think of Tom Coughlin's face. And I love Tom Coughlin. But I think, and you don't want to, you certainly don't want to make fun of it, but it was so surprising to see somebody's face turn that color. But obviously, he lived to tell, and it's okay after they warmed up.
So then Lawrence Tynes start missing some field goals here to try to put this thing away. And you're sitting there, and I know I was feeling this and talking to Carl Banks and Dick Lynch during commercial breaks. It's like, they've had 8 million chances to put this game away, and they haven't put it away. And at some point, Favre is going to become Favre for at least a drive here, and they're going to kind of squander the golden opportunity. Did you feel that way in the booth as the game was starting to unfold?
Yes, because that Giants team was still on the younger side, and Favre was then wrapping up his time in Green Bay, that incredible run, and you just felt like any fan of a team, I don't care what the sport, I don't care what the team, when you miss chances to put a game away and then you're playing against a Hall of Famer, you think, well, that's it. We blew it. We had it. We lost it. But Favre never became Favre. It never happened in that game. And so, Tynes finally hits one, which it's easy to say that he just starts missing field goals, and I'm with you. But I just can't imagine kicking a ball with that footing, with the ball must have been like a rock. They're trying to keep him as warm as they can. And I don't remember the length of the game-winning field goal. It was in the high 30s, though, I think. Maybe
47.
38 yard. 47. Oh, God. Okay.
It's still
47 yard. Is it that in that night, in that stadium, and on grass with that temperature? That's amazing.
The funny thing is that Corey Webster gets the pick, so you're saying, all right, they have to win it here. You're playing with too much fire now. They don't really do anything offensively. And there's that kind of funny look with frozen face Coughlin as Tynes just decides to run out, because I think there was a feeling like, hey, you know what? With the way their D is playing, maybe they'll punt him here and try to pin him and then set up a short field if they can get a 3 and out. And then all of a sudden you see Tynes come running in. It's like, I'm good to go. It was like he thought he was in Miami.
Yeah, no, I agree. I kind of remember feeling like, well, this is no given. And now you're going to hand Favre the ball back, with a short field and what have you. So that he hit that was, I thought, stunning. And one of the biggest field goals I think I've ever called, for a shot to go to the Super Bowl on that night, 47 yards. That's a field goal.
I know that, you guys had the opportunity to then do the Super Bowl. It must have been kind of fun to, because I know, listen, it's all part of a network rotation. And in 2011, you did the NFC Championship game, but NBC did 46. But being along for that ride, once they had beaten Tampa and then knocking off the Cowboys in Dallas and then doing this game, it must have been a nice feeling to know that, hey, we're going to get a chance to see this storybook ending one way or another, but be on the call of it since we've done so many of these games anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, you see the team every day. And that's kind of the difference. Not that anybody cares about this part of it, but when you leave a place like Fox that covers a conference, you can ride the hot team, you can ride the hot hand. So you get a firsthand sense of where these teams are, as opposed to a Monday night schedule where you're all over the place and you get one team, you get a bunch of teams twice. That's it. We had that whole run. And so you get the feeling like these guys probably better than you actually do. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's distance there between any team and the network announcers, but you do develop relationships. You do use that confidence that I think in the case of Tom Coughlin, he had with us as a group, that he could open up and share things. And we knew things going into that game that we might not have known otherwise. So, yeah, it's nice to see those stories through. And then to know that it's New York. I mean, my first World Series at Fox was the Yankees in the Bronx winning the World Series against the Atlanta Braves. My second Super Bowl is this titanic matchup of a team with Brady and Belichick and going for perfection and Moss and Seau and the guys that were on that side. And then a team from New York, and everybody's like, "Oh, you hate the Yankees, you hate the Giants." It's like it's actually the opposite. When you do what I do, you're dying to get a New York team into whatever World Series, a Super Bowl, a Stanley Cup final, whatever it is, because there's more attention, the numbers are bigger, everybody's happier, and you get to be in New York. So it was an unbelievable matchup that was really hard going into that Super Bowl to not get intimidated by the platform, the size of the audience, which was just under 100 million people, and then those two teams with that much history on the line.
Joe, as the Giants celebrate their 100 seasons, we want to thank you so much for taking a couple minutes to look back at that NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl, and we really appreciate you sharing your time with the audience.
All right, give me my my contact at Bob's Discount Furniture, and I'm gonna hit him up for a lamp and a lounger.
There you go. Joe Buck joining us here on this edition of Papa's Perspective, brought to you by the aforementioned Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store and mattress partner of the New York Football Giants.